Hey, what's up everyone? Today we're going to go over checking for spark, and this is something that I don't do a lot on my videos because a lot of the engines I work on are relatively new within the last 20-25 years or so, and those you never have to, in my opinion, too often check. Generally spark is not a problem. You should check, but only if you suspect there's a problem with spark. So the very first thing you're going to want to do when checking for spark, so let's say for instance you have a generator or a weed eater or anything. For our purpose of our example, we're going to say a lawnmower. Now this is brake parts cleaner. It's flammable. You can get starting fluid, brake cleaner. You can get a little bit of gas, put it in the straw, put it in the throat of the carb, wherever you want to go. Here's a carburetor off of the engine. The throat of the carb is right here. So when I say throat of the carb, press down. Down there, it might dribble out a little bit. I'm not going to get too deep into it, but how a carb ends up working is the center part actually compresses the air a little bit, so it becomes a pressure differential. If you can even put it down past that point. That way that little bump can actually be a benefit rather than a hindrance. So you put a little fuel, spray, whatever, down, and you pull, and it starts. Boom, you've ruled out a spark problem. It does not. Very first thing that I would be checking is a spark plug. Is the spark plug in good condition? Is it broken? Is there a bridge? What I mean a bridge is over here. There's two electrodes, and if they are touching in any way, see how there's an air gap there? They're touching, whether that be through carbon, whether that be through fuel, whether that be from the fact that the piston smacked it, whatever. If it's touching, that could be your problem right there. If it is touching without having any type of outside influence, let's just call it that, and you have to bend it back, you're going to want to check why that happened before you just start pulling again. Next thing that can happen is if you look at the gapping, it seems very, very wide. Go to your local automotive store. They're very cheap. They're not the best, but they'll work. Is a gap, a little meter, I suppose. These types of things for small engines, for gapping, is going to be about 30 thousandths. Some are going to be a little bit wider, some are going to be a little longer. There's technically a rule of 10, 20, 30, 30 being a spark plug. Now, you clean the spark plug, it seems to be fine, and there's the gap, it's not dirty, it seems to be okay. Next, you're going to look at, maybe you just need to get a new one. I brought this one here because this is a aftermarket plug. If you have, well, a no-name Chinese plug, let's say that way. Like this says Wegzine, there's Savior, there's some that don't even have a name. But if you look at it, I mean, it looks like a nice plug. Very blingy, very gaudy. But unlike this good NGK plug, this plug is total garbage. The only thing that you need to do is throw this away. Not even gonna worry about it anymore. Garbage. Get yourself a good NGK plug, Champion. Even Autolite is good. Just don't get the cheapest one out there. Get a known name. Denso, that's also very good. So get a new plug, you can fix that problem. If that is still not working, you can, or if you don't have the ability to, you can test your plug. Check out a video I made on checking your plug. Basically, you just want to see if your plug's good, and if you don't want to replace or you can't, then you want to check it. But more likely than not, this is like $2. Just replace it. Now, If you look at your plug, you replace it and still nothing. On the engine, I didn't bring up another engine just because, you know, they're all different. So whatever engine you have, a Honda, Briggs, whatever, there's going to be a coil that looks very, very similar to this. And everyone is going to be the same idea. This is a kill wire. Basically what ends up happening is some type of mechanism, whether it be to bail on your lawnmower, a switch on a pressure washer, whatever it is when it's on, this is going to be going to nothing. It's going to be isolated. There's nothing that's going to be utilizing this wire whatsoever. When it's switched off, or if you let go of the bail, what ends up happening is this wire grounds out the coil, kills electricity. The spark plug no longer can spark. Now, the reason why I bring this up is a lot of the times this cable or this wire can be damaged, especially if it's been overheated. So you want to look at it. I mean, it could be nasty looking, dirty, doesn't matter. But if the insulation is in good condition, or it doesn't appear to be broken, you're probably okay. If there is a hole or a rip or anything, you're going to want to either replace it or repair. Good way to check if there is one, because there's a lot of times this is fished in a very hard to reach area to really check all of it. Simply disconnect it. Take your let's do this. Let's imagine this is a good plug. Take your good plug and put it into the boot, and you're going to want to ground out this threaded area. You could go right here, it doesn't really matter, as long as it's grounded, but not in the engine, because you want to be able to see it. I mean, potentially you could do the same carb trick, but you're just going to be, more likely than not, you're going to have taken off a few parts, so you don't want your engine running. And the fact that you disconnected your cable, if it does start to run, you don't have a way to turn it off. So, with it out of the engine, ground it simply by doing that on a piece of metal, aluminum, it doesn't matter, it just has to be non-painted, clean metal. Ground it, you see spark, you know your problem is the cable. If you put the cable back on and you do the exact same thing again and still no spark, this is your problem. If you look at it and still looks to be fine, there's something there that's just not working out very well. Just replace it. So now, if that still did not work, you're kind of looking at the coil. At this point in time, I really want to bring up this. This is a modern coil. It does not require points, it does not require a condenser. It only requires a magnet on your flywheel to rotate past it to then generate electricity. If for any reason you're using an older machine and there are two cables, there's a kill, which is usually a tab that's easily removable, and there's another one that is not usually removable. Potentially it could be, but generally it's not. But the way to 100% distinguish between the two is the cable would be going underneath the flywheel and behind it. On the crank, there's going to be a pointed condenser system. They're all more or less the same. They're all a little bit different. However, I'm not going to go into that. If you have a points and condenser system, to be honest, if you can, I would upgrade to a more updated coil. You're going to get a better response, you're going to get a better outcome, and you're just going to get a better running engine. If that's not an option, or you do not want to, you're going to check the condenser and the coil, look at your specific engine's ignition system, and a multimeter is going to be your best friend. You're going to want to turn your multimeter to ohms, which is the little horseshoe looking piece and check it out. Now, when you do this part, we're gonna get a little close and personal. How about that? One piece that I did kind of briefly go over about the points in Condenser, it's not always the fact that the part is bad, but it can be the fact that the points just aren't connecting. There is going to be some type of pin or something on the crank, usually, that's going to be moving and touching a piece that is then connected to the rest of the ignition system. If those two metal pieces, which are usually very small, have any type of debris, corrosion, anything like that, that is going to be need to be cleaned off, because those two metal pieces have to be touching. Go ahead and clean that up. The easiest way is with a piece of sandpaper, real fine grit. You can also get a small file. I like to keep some files on hand for that exact reason. I'll show you real quick if I can find one. Well, either way, small file. You don't want to take off a lot. You just want to get it to clean metal. That's it. Cannot stress the importance of that. In addition to that one, you can also have a too wide of a gap, spin that motor over, and if those pieces never actually touch, that's your problem right there. You need to do some type of adjustment. When that piece goes to make contact, you need to have it touching. Every single points and condenser system is going to have some type of tolerance where it needs to have within a certain distance between the 2 points. Look it up, get a feeler gauge, adjust it to whatever it says on there. Not going to go over too much about the points. Just know that is probably a problem. I would still, like I said, recommend getting updated coil. So now you are at that point in time when you are suspecting your coil is bad. We have two options. One, we can test the coil, or two, we could just replace it. I almost always just go to the replacement because it's not being grounded and it's not the spark plug. It's, inside here there's something that went haywire, disconnected, and just not making a good connection. However, before you do that, just as a final test, take a piece of metal. I like using a screwdriver or something that's metallic. Take this and find the magnet on your flywheel. If this does not get pulled up or stick to it and there's no magnetism left over, you have to be careful. Make sure you're actually doing a magnet. Some flywheels will have something that looks like the magnet on the opposite end of the magnet for balance purposes. Make sure it's the real magnet. Or it could be on the inside too. So wherever your magnet is on your flywheel. If that magnet is no good, you're probably going to have to replace it if that's a possibility. If that is not a possibility, you need a whole new flywheel. That's going to be significantly more expensive. I hope you don't have to do that. So now we know there's magnetism. The only other thing is the coil. We can just replace it. Make sure you get the one that's rated for your machine. Potentially you can get some that will fit your flywheel and the mounting. It's not the best of ideas, but if you really need to in an emergency, that's always a possibility. They make special brackets. For instance, if you want to put a coil from a 5-horse onto a 3-horse Briggs, you can. Well, technically, there's a little bit more to it than that. You're changing a couple other parts, but that's not the point. You can test your coil. I don't do this too often because there's nothing left to it, but just in case you want to, take your multimeter, turn it to ohms, which it's on right now. Now, for real precise pieces of machinery, you want to check your internal resistance. Mine is usually 0.1. It's kind of fluctuating, but It's not a very good meter. Take your spark plug out. You're going to want to touch the metal inside the boot. I don't know if I'm going to be able to with this one without removing the boot, but let's just imagine that that's touching. You then want to take sandpaper, brush, something. You can even scrape off with your multimeter end and just get clean metal. Or if there's already clean metal, like right here, then that's fine. Granted, we would usually be seeing a reading, but I'm not actually touching it because I have the wrong ends on this particular multimeter. At that point, you have the resistance of your coil. Go online, and every manufacturer is going to have a tolerable resistance. If it falls within that amount, then you're okay. If it is completely out, or if you touch it and it never makes any connection, it just says open like it does now, you have a problem. Your coil is bad. Now let's say you checked it and it was fine. It's well within tolerance, but we're still not getting any spark. Really, the final thing you're going to want to try is the gap between the coil here and the flywheel. If it is too large, it's not going to have enough energy to then convert into electricity. You're not going to have any spark. So you're going to want to put it back on. Majority of the time it's 10 thousandths. If for any reason it's a little bit different, check your manufacturer. But generally it is 10 thousandths. And that's really about it. There could be one-off situations. Not too many of them are out there. If you follow this step, this is going to work for Briggs, Honda, Tecumseh, 2 cycles, 4, it doesn't matter. If it's a small engine, it's going to work with that. So follow this step by step. I like to go in this order because it's easiest to hardest and cheapest to more expensive the further along you get. So hopefully this helped out. If this does, leave a thumbs up, subscribe, catch me in my next video, follow me on Instagram. I'll see you on a different video. Have a good night.